All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. This is Taking Chances Podcast. This is your lovely host, Justin.
And Burnett.
And Quentin.
All right, guys. So I feel like, a common theme about our show is kind of talking about different things that are kind of affecting the world within our current pandemic. We're still in this 3 years later. Who would have thought about it? Who would have thought? But I feel like I want to sort of take it and talk about how the pandemic is affecting our education systems. Most people are returning to the workplace, people are returning to their jobs, people are returning to their social lives, but there's also another component about this that I feel like is not being talked about enough is, the students and teachers returning back to the education space. For about, I'd say up until last year, most people were kind of doing this hybrid learning model where some kids were doing learning online and some kids were back in school, but now the world is gearing towards bringing more kids back into school and also bringing more teachers into school. And I feel like on both sides of this, we're seeing different things within the media about how it's affecting our students and how it's affecting our teachers. So for this episode, I thought it'd be pretty cool to kind of get some perspective and bring in people that are actively in the field and really just shed some light on these issues that are affecting them. So I'm going to turn it over to Burnett and Q because we have two brand new guests that I'm really excited to have. They're going to be here to touch base on some of these issues and really, shed light on how it's affecting our people that are doing the good work.
Yep. So I'll actually start with someone who is near and dear to my heart. We both went to law school together. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Bevin Holloway. And he's from Houston, Texas. He has roots from Trinidad. And he is, he's a lawyer and an educator. He earned his Bachelor of Arts from University of Texas at Austin. He's taught development at Columbia University's Teachers College. And he received his Juris Doctorate from Drake Law. And he is honestly a trailblazer when it comes to this education thing. And I know that he has a lot of great plans when it comes to just thinking about how to connect education with policy. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say today on today's episode because I think he's going to have a great perspective.
And then I'm going to introduce our second guest, who happens to be near and dear to my heart. I call her my little sister. Deanee Love. She teaches in special education. She's been in education for 5 years and volunteered since she was at the age of 12. She currently is from Brooklyn, New York, but is residing in Baltimore, Maryland. She has a passion of being art, dance. She has her own YouTube channel, which we'll probably put at the bottom of the screen. And then she's just trying to be a continuous student and just keep learning and keep teaching her students. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So we'll just bring them in.
Yep, get them on board. Hey, guys.
Hello.
We are so happy to have you guys on today's episode.
First, I want to start by asking how both of you are doing. Tell us a little bit about who you are, how you're doing today, and, maybe share a fun fact about you guys that our listeners may not know about you guys.
Love, gonna go first? Ladies first.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So I started off as just a special educator. I finished my master's program in 2020. So right as the pandemic started, I finished my master's program. So now I am dual certified in special education, general ed. Currently, I was teaching in an actual classroom as a special education teacher, but now I'm more of in an admin position. So now I have the opportunity to conduct IEP meetings for K through 8 in my school. And I also basically work for the city of Baltimore. So handling all of the IEP program and special education programs, that department in my school. It is rough. I really miss the classroom, but yeah, fun fact about me. Something juicy. Fun fact about me. I am becoming very open-minded with food. I'm very open-minded with food. I will try just about anything at this point, just because.
Nice. Quick question before we jump to Bevin real quick. You mentioned IEP. For the listeners that don't know what that is, do you mind just telling us?
Sure. So an IEP is an acronym for individualized education program or plan. It's usually particular to that student who has special needs. So any student that qualifies for special education gets an IEP, or a 504, which is just like a form that kind of says like what supports they get in the classroom or what special education services they'll get in and outside the classroom that is general education setting for them. And it's designed with the team, including their parent, their general education teacher, special education teacher. It involves a lot of evaluations, assessments, and reports being conducted before it's finalized. And it's a continuous document pretty much. So it follows the student for as long as they qualify for special education throughout their entire education career. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe it stops at college, but that's the United States for you.
Love it. Bevin?
Well, one, I want to say I'm jealous that you're out the classroom. She said she missed the classroom. I'm taking me with you out the classroom. And then I also want to add when she was talking about the IEPs and the 504, like she did it in a cute way. But if a teacher received a 504, it's like, oh shit, because usually with IEPs, with the kids with different needs, that's okay. They have different needs. You just got to accommodate and modify their work. But with the 504 plan, it's more like the bad kids. So every time I get that, I'm like, oh my gosh. But either which way, how y'all doing? I am Bevin Holloway. I'm from Houston, Texas. I did my undergrad at UT Austin, and I didn't major in education. I just said, I need a job. And I thought that teaching was going to be easy. I'm just going to do it for a little bit and, transition on. But I actually love it, and it's a lot harder than you would expect. And I taught at a charter school for 2 years, went to law school at Burnett, and then I returned to education at the Houston Independent School District. And I am the ELAR teacher for the GT students. I'm the ELAR department chair for 6 through 8 and an effective practice specialist. So I coach a cohort of teachers on how to teach. And hopefully, I could transition out of that. Either I could transition out of that and join Miss Love in admin or something else in a different capacity.
Nice. Y'all got some impressive
resumes.
Yeah.
I want to see that. Like, I feel like we have two sides of just solid experience here. Like, I definitely before we even get to the bread and butter of this interview, I definitely want to cheers to you two because this is just this wow. The terminologies, the experience, like love to see it, guys.
We're already learning, and we're not even 10 minutes in. Like, I love it.
Wait, can I just shout out? I heard him shout out his alma mater, so I had to shout out. I am from the first degree granting HBCU. I am proud alumnus of Lincoln University of Pennsylvania.
Look, and it's Black History Month, so they want us to wear HBCU shirts on Monday. So if you got a Lincoln shirt, just I'll send you my address. Just send it.
I got you, Bevin. I got you. I'm gonna send you a Lincoln tee.
It's funny because I'm actually in my professional capacity planning a program with Lincoln that's happening this week. It's going to honor a Lincoln University alum by the name of Franklin Williams. Okay. He was an ambassador. He worked with Thurgood Marshall. He was a part of the Peace Corps. He helped start the Peace Corps. And he argued so many important cases. There was like a case in Florida called the Groveland Four. They were wrongfully convicted of, I believe, raping, sexually assaulting women, and he was one of the lead lawyers on that case. But he is an alum of Lincoln, and so my job, we've worked on this really great program this week to showcase him. So yes, and it's been such a pleasure to work with Lincoln University, so I just will say that.
Don't stop. Don't do that to us.
All right,
sorry,
guys. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So the pandemic. So within the pandemic right now, we're sort of seeing the world coming back to the new normal, as I like to say, because the old normal is sort of dead. But, we're seeing a lot of teachers walking away from their roles. We kind of wanted to sort of gauge just what the classroom looks like within the pandemic nowadays, kind of the experience of you both as educators within this sphere, and sort of just talk about different issues or different things that people might not even realize that may be going on. So I wanted to run a fact by you guys before I ask you the first question. So the National Education Association, representing nearly 3 million educators, recently released its latest survey conducted in January 2022, showing that 90% of educators are responding that burnout is a serious problem for them. What do you say to that?
You want to go, Bevin, or you want me to go?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Burnout is real. I feel like, especially for the teachers that, well, first of all, I feel like with education, you definitely get work-life balance. You get weekends off, you get holidays off, you get the summer off, and you're paid. So that's great. However, some teachers definitely do summer school and different programs and Saturday school and tutorials and all those different things. And I feel like the ones that do summer school, they feel that burnout a lot more because you have to finish up that summer school program and come back for the fall semester and just give it 100%. And those are teachers that I see kind of like dwindle down a little faster than the rest. I feel like that summertime does help you with preventing burnout. But sometimes, depending on the school district you're in, that summer's just not enough time. So, I feel like all teachers, they experience the burnout just because kids can be a challenge to deal with, and it's a challenge every day. So I would agree that that is something that is real. What do you think, Miss Love?
I can say, so there's two sides. There's 2 points I'm gonna make. One being personal because I've experienced burnout personally to the point where I almost ended up in a hospital. So I worked at an all-black school, black led, black run, black owned school, and a lot of those holidays that many schools get, and was when I was in New York, and up until I want to say last May. In this school, we don't celebrate a lot of those holidays that a lot of city or public schools get off. When people get off for the summertime, you get 2 months off. No, we got 3 weeks off, and we were right back at it again for PDs. And also, too, we were also having a lot of data-driven meetings. So imagine your day, especially if it starts at 7:15 with a staff meeting at 7:15, and your day ends at 5:30. So that's a drag, and you have your kids until about 4:30. Unless their parents is late, then that's even longer. Those type of situations, you experience burnout a lot more. I was totally committed to my school. I mean, I love the vision, the drive. Like, I was there consistently. There would be days I'd stay till sometimes 7 p.m. because I knew the staff, the custodial staff, so they would let me, if I was printing assessments. And it got to the point where I was so accustomed to just running that I didn't realize my body had given out. I went to the doctor one day because I had a steady cold, like I had a steady cough that was really bad. I kept getting headaches, but to me, I'm kind of like, I have a high pain tolerance. So I went to the doctor one day because I didn't want to take any days off, but I something told me to take this day off. I took it off and I went to the doctor. She said, Miss Love, you were literally, if you had waited one more week, you would have been in the hospital. I had walking pneumonia. I had no idea. And my behind was still trying to come to work. And my chief of staff was sending me home. She was like, listen, I understand you may feel like you don't have the days, whatever. She was like, but I'm vouching for you. You have to stay home. And burnout is real. People believe that teachers literally have to teach kids, or that we're glorified babysitters, for lack of terms. But it's a lot more. There's a lot of data. It's a lot of numbers, a lot of authentic creation of work that has to get done, or a lot of having patience to collaborate with parents, admin, students. Students are accustomed to a different belief. This generation, very different, very different than what we were raised on. So it's a lot that you're grappling with. And I think the pandemic didn't help because a lot of parents now have either given up or now feel that they can do your job that you have gone to school to do. So it's a lot of different ways to look at it.
I wanna follow up to something you just said, and I'm glad you brought up the pandemic aspect because I feel like nowadays the role of teacher, student, and parent, they're sort of becoming intertwined, and I feel like in this time that students and teachers and parents got to be at home, sort of the roles shifted or whatnot. So how do you feel like the pandemic sort of contributed to that burnout and just the whole breakdown of teacher, student, and parent?
Well, before they answer, Justin, I will also say that I commend teachers because to be a teacher, some of these teachers have children, and then to
Yes.
teach and be stuck home with your child, like that's the dual role. So some teachers probably would experience that burnout even quicker because they have to now deal with the child that's already in a home trying to learn and teach kids. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So just to take that into
I'll
consideration.
I'll say it's a bunch of bullshit. So the reason I became a teacher was because I had great teachers my entire life. I can think of maybe 3 white teachers that I've had. Majority of my teachers in my lifetime have been Black. Looked like me, came up in the same neighborhood as me, so they understood. That's not what's going on right now in the pandemic. There's a lot of teachers who are giving up because parents are either super combative, and it's like, well, you're teaching my child this, and because they're so focused on stuck on their way of learning or their style of how I grew up and how I should be raising my child, that me now policing your child or trying to teach your child a different style of learning doesn't work with what you're used to. So now you're trying to teach your child what I'm doing. And then on top of that, there's also the student who feels, I don't have to listen to you. My mommy said boop, 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 and all this. I don't got to listen to you because I've been home with mommy for 2 years. And for children who are in kindergarten, this is their first school experience, a lot of them, period. So they have no social skills. So it's a lot of reorganizing what it looks like to be in the classroom, a lot of reteaching, and a lot of self-reflection, because you have to consistently, as a teacher, remind yourself, this is because they've been home. This is because they have been home. It's not that they don't know, but it's because they've been home. So because you are now reprogrammed to do whatever you're used to doing at home and possibly, like staring through a computer or talking to a piece of paper and just trying to learn anything, you've forgotten all what it means to be in a physical setting. So it's a lot of reteaching, but also a lot of bullshit because you have people who want to do your job for you, curse you out, and think that you're supposed to take it. I don't get paid enough for this, but I digress. Moving on.
It's so funny you say that because one of my friends who's also in the education field, I remember he sent me this photo where a parent was pretty much going off on the school, and she ended the email saying, "I hope you have the day you deserve." And I was like, oh, I never heard that before. Like, I hope you have the day you deserve. Like, that's a read. Like, not have a good day. No, the day you deserve. I was like, oh, these parents getting fancy.
I gotta put that one in my book to use.
I definitely might take that. Might end up in an email per my previous email. I hope you have the day you deserve.
Bev, what's your take on this question from Houston?
Well, first, Miss Love, what grade you teach or taught?
I've taught kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I've had fourth grade. I'm currently servicing third grade.
Okay.
So anything pretty much K to 5 so far, but I've supported with middle school.
Yeah, so when you were speaking, I was like, she must teach the younger kids because I feel like that is definitely more of a struggle because during the pandemic, just like how Quentin was saying, like there's families to where you might have to teach, but you also have kids at home that you got to teach. I was homeschooling my little brother. My mom started all the way over, so I have a brother that's 20 years younger than me. So he's in the second grade, and I was homeschooling him and just trying to get him engaged with this computer screen was a challenge. And I would have thought that he would have been great at it. You're always on your tablet. This generation is so, used to navigating things. And it's hard to keep his attention. It's hard to, for him to follow along. It's hard for him to learn how to write and hold a pencil because that's what they learn at that age when the teacher's on the other side of the screen. So I definitely know what you're talking about. However, I teach 8th grade. So that's like, for all the people that's not in education, that's like the baddest of the baddest age group. But they are funny. Like, they are hilarious. They're big babies, even though they think they're grown. And you can actually hold a conversation with them. They're funny. Now, to answer the question about how the pandemic has affected teaching, especially with this whole hybrid world, this last year was my first year teaching virtually. So I definitely had to learn the platforms and I had to figure out like how can I be effective. And I feel like I did a good job. Like I feel like I did a good job conveying myself. I did a good job of trying to keep the kids that did come to class engaged. However, there's real life situations like you don't have parents at home to hold the kids accountable, or you got parents at home that are saying they're holding the kids accountable, but they also calling their kids to come and wash the dishes and sink, and they're not understanding that you need to respect this instructional time. Or if the student don't want to follow along or turn your camera on, or hey, go ahead and go into your notebook and do whatever, and now you got to call a parent think it's okay to discipline them in front of the class virtually when we don't need all that either. So I feel like the virtual world just made it a little interesting. You're able to connect with the parents in a different way. You see all up in their home. They want to, be a part of, the lesson sometimes. And it could be a little annoying, but I haven't had too many issues with parents because I feel like since I teach 8th grade, I could actually, talk to them and get them together without too much hands-on with the parent. The only time I had an issue with a parent was last year, and she had a whole issue on the novel that I chose. So I chose this novel called The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. It was about this Native American boy who, it's a really good book. It's this Native American boy that lived on a reservation, and he was grappling with his identity there, but then he wanted a better quality education. So he went to an all-white school that had a better quality education. And since it was a diary, you'll get his personal thoughts. So he was in the 8th grade. So he's cursing and he's talking about puberty and other stuff, So it's like when he's having these conversations in his diary, the kids love the book because they can relate to him and stuff like that. But then when parents of a different generation are looking like, well, this book says the word damn in it, how do you have my kid reading this? And I'm looking like, well, this is the GC class and the other teacher's SPED, so what you want to do? And SPED is like for the special ed department. So it's like I don't agree with the way that they do stuff at my current school. I like when they mix the classes to where you have, kids of different levels in a classroom because they can learn from each other. But at my campus, they have all the GT kids in one class, all the lower kids in one class. They have clusters. So
that's more traditional.
Yeah, and I don't really like it because I feel like if you're in a room where all the kids are low, how are you going to grow? So I don't care for it. But I was telling the parent, like, I'm not changing my book. So I'm like, either you could purchase the book without those words in it, or you could put her in a different class. However, those classes are going to be SPED kids or, my LEP kids that don't speak English. So what you want to do? So it's like, that's the only time I had an issue with a parent. But other than that, parents weren't the issue. It was really the kids that did not attend all year. Like they would just not log in. And it would be admin as well that would want to hop in your room and be like, well, your board is not updated and you don't have anchor charts. And I'm like, the kids are at home. I'm like, you want us to do all these things and decorate our room and all that? There's nobody in my room. So I'm just like, you're adding all these tasks for us to do and it doesn't make sense, So it's like, I feel like with the school trying to figure out how the year looks when things are virtual was a growing pain for the teachers because it's like half this stuff don't make sense to do because the kids are not here. And stuff that we should be doing, y'all not even thinking about it because y'all didn't take the time to brainstorm, what it will look like. So I would just say that was more so the issue for me. It wasn't like the kids because they were of age to kind of like know how to type and know how to communicate with me a little better.
So would you guys say, like, is it fair to say that a lot of children are kind of just being passed on to the next level without even meeting their requirements?
Not in Mr. Holloway class.
I can speak to that. So when lockdown first started, my class, I had inherited my class, and this is when I was teaching 2nd grade. I want to say this is maybe like my 3rd year teaching. I inherited my class because so many teachers had left. And I had no data. So when I mean data, I had no test scores for them. I had no current reading levels for them. I had to start from scratch for them in March. So my class became...
I just wanted to comment right there. So for people that's not teachers, usually when you get that previous year's data, you know how to work with your kids.
Start your year, right?
You see data where your kids are below level, you know those are your focus kids, so where you're going to try to push for those kids. And if you don't have no data, it's like, well, let's just see, what we got. But my bad.
No. That was very good. Very good asterisk that you need to put in. So I had inherited those students, and my class became the guinea pig class. So I had to figure out how to do reading assessments via Zoom. I had to figure out how to do regular assessments. So this is writing, this is math, reading, social studies, all of it via Zoom, and then still grade it, send it, come up with progress reports. I say all this to say it became difficult because those first couple months of the pandemic, and I want to say we were only in school maybe 3 or 4 after that, it became difficult because I had just inherited a class. I had to figure out now how to have conversations with parents about retention. So retention meaning if they're going to get left back. How do you have a conversation with somebody's parent during a pandemic where people are dying left and right, people are sick, you have children who are in the house with sick parents, barely able to get their kids on what they are, for me to tell you that I have to leave your child back because they cannot perform. So many of those conversations happened those first 2 years of the pandemic that stressed teachers out because schools after a while were not trying to hear the whole conversation of, oh, well, it's a pandemic and we need you. Like, I know my firsthand experience is starting to become, I'm sorry, Miss Love, you have to have that conversation. And then you have the teacher like me who's like, how?
Miss Love, in New York or Maryland, does the state assessment count for y'all in these last 2 years?
In New York, well, I just moved to Baltimore, but in New York, I know grade 3 assessments, state assessments is when it starts. So I remember I had second grade, so they had only school-wide assessments. So I was going off school-wide assessments, informal data such as classwork, and also where they were reading level-wise. So if they were above or on reading level, then they were safe, and based on how they performed on their school-wide assessments. But to answer your question, it starts 3rd grade for New York, and I think Baltimore here is 3rd grade as well. Those are statewide assessments. That's when they count.
I was asking because when you were talking about like retention and stuff, I know here in Texas, the STAR exam for 8th grade is what determines that, and your GPA or your final report cards what determines if you go to high school or not. But since we were in a pandemic, they decided to not make those scores count. So then a lot of students were able to opt in or opt out of even taking the STAR. So then it all relied on your report card or like the reading assessment to see if you're on grade level, like you said. And for some that was okay, but for some it wasn't, because if they're looking like, well, I'm not going to take the STAR, then I just gotta, worry about passing that last report card, even though I've been failing all year. So it's like, I don't know. It has pros and cons.
It was a similar experience over here in New York. I know. I think the first year of the pandemic, the first and possibly the second year they were thinking about it, the assessments were nixed. Like, I think the second going to the 3rd year, well, this is 3rd year, going into the 2nd year, it became optional. But I know the first year they wiped all of New York assessment. They were like, listen, we can't ask students to take this assessment. But I know moving towards like year 2 and now this year, they were like, listen, that's not an option no more. Like, now you got to figure it out. Y'all are responsible. So I know that was the issue. So for the first year, it was school-wide assessments.
And I know here in Texas, which makes no sense, they decided after the pandemic to change the format of the state administered test. Did they do that with y'all too?
I don't remember. That was so long ago.
No, I'm talking about this year. I know here in Texas, we've always had the format where the students had for 8th grade, they had their reading test. Well, for ELA, they'll, do the reading test, multiple choice, maybe some short answers, stuff like that. But they're changing that whole format to where now the kids have to do analysis, they have to do grammar, and they have to do all these different things to pass to go to the 9th grade. And they haven't been in school, during the pandemic, or, there's a lot of gaps in learning. So I just didn't think it was smart for Texas to say, well, hey, let's go ahead and make the standardized test even harder now, even though they haven't been in school. So I just didn't know if I was the only one experiencing that, and it sounded like I am.
Well, I know as far as digital formatting, like they're right now they have them doing it strictly digital. So they get their tickets and stuff like printed for the assessment, but the actual test is online. That's what I do know. As far as changing the formatting for questions and stuff, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we've transitioned to digital, which haven't been too bad. But it's the formatting. Like, mind you, expository essays were not on the standardized test, and now they're required to do expository essays. Grammar.
Can't write though.
You said what?
These kids can't write.
At all.
How are you expository anything?
Right. So that's why Mr. Holloway doing expository writing workshops on Wednesdays, because y'all don't know how to write. And now they are looking at your writing to make sure that you go and pass your test to go to ninth grade. And then also with grammar and conjugating words and all that different stuff. This is not something that we had to do in the 8th grade during the whole time I've taught. Like we did vocabulary lessons and stuff like that, but it wasn't necessarily tested on the STAR, or that, which is our state administered test. But now they're being tested on the STAR for grammar. They're being tested on the STAR for their expository essays and analysis and all this different stuff. And it's like, how? When they were literally coming out of the pandemic where kids have not even either been in the classroom or there's a huge gap in their learning, but now we want to raise the rigor of the test. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. However, I'm not, that's above my pay grade. So I just, I do what I do.
Love your tax bracket. You pay your tax bracket, honey.
So I actually have a question for you, Bevin, because Deanee raised a really good point about being in the epicenter of the pandemic when it took place, and people are dying left and right. So you kind of have to deal with the two realities of what's happening in school, but also what's happening around you. So a year ago, when around this time, I think in Texas, it was the freeze, right? When you guys had the power crisis. How did you?
Chris Christie was out of the country.
Oh yeah, he was like flying. But people had the receipts when he was at the airport. But yeah, you guys suffered the freeze like a year ago this time, and that's on top of a pandemic. How did you manage getting through that as an educator?
Well, so with the pandemic, of course, I would definitely try to understand, what the students are going through, because if students were exposed, so with my school last year, we did hybrid learning. So majority of the campus was virtual, and I will literally have some classes where I'll have 2 in-person students, which is lovely. But, I only have 2 in-person students. And let's say if I had a class where someone was exposed to something at home or whatever, they would now have to go home. But since I taught on my computer virtually, whether you were in person or not during that time, with them going home, there's really no need for that. You're not going to miss a beat because you're going to still log in like you usually do in the classroom. You're just going to do it now at home. So I would just kind of, push them to, keep, keeping up with everything. And then if the kid themselves was really, really sick to where they couldn't do it, I wasn't the type of teacher that was like, hey, this assessment is due today. After that, that's it. I would keep the assignment up. So you have all the time to complete it, before I grade it and put it in. So there's really no excuse why you couldn't get to that assignment and do it, because I'm offering it for you. And I'm also offering reassessment. So if you didn't really do so well before that grading cycle, we're going to have a flex day. I'm going to go ahead and give you these assignments that I'm going to do a quick little reteach. I'm going to give you these assignments so you can make up your grade, boost your grade. You just have to kind of get creative with providing all the opportunities for learning, but also opportunities to show that they're achieving, so you won't have kids falling behind just because we want to use the excuse of it's the pandemic and they're not learning and all that different stuff. Outside of the pandemic with the freeze, I was out of town. I did. I went to DC for the weekend. It was supposed to be the weekend trip, but I wasn't complaining when that weekend turned to a week. I'm like, oh, shit, So I went to DC for a weekend. I was hanging with my friends, and then when the freeze happened, I'm following everything on social media. I'm looking at my school district to see, are they closing down? So every day they'll let you know if they're opening up or not. So I would literally just kind of go to the site and just share that information on Microsoft Teams in the general post with my students, or on my teacher Instagram page, on my story and stuff like that, so the kids can know, oh, we're not going to school today. We're not going to school today. And I would, and we weren't supposed to deliver any instruction, but the good thing is that we had a lot of assessments, and we also had a project that we were doing before that freeze. So it gave them more time to complete their project. It gave them time to complete those assessments that they weren't doing in class. So I was just kind of like pushing to get something, like just basically kind of fill those gaps before we came back to school. Just kind of, letting them know that, yeah, you're at home, yeah, there's a freeze, but we're going to get back to school. You don't want to fall behind. Use this time to catch up. Use this time to complete those assignments that you didn't do while I was there. Or, just, trying to keep on motivating them to get stuff done. So the freeze was great because it allowed it allowed them to catch up. It allowed me to go on a week break without taking away from my time. So I loved it.
That is funny.
I have a question for both of you guys, actually. So I think the most shocking part of hearing both of your perspectives is that a lot was put on the backs of teachers during the pandemic. I mean, just from the outside, and it kind of seemed like the school systems were kind of scrambling to kind of figure out what to do as far as vaccination statuses or masks or mitigation strategies, staff outages, staff shortages. Do you guys think that as teachers who basically are out there doing the work of what the administrations, what the school system should be really doing, do you guys feel like, are you concerned for the future? Are there things that you kind of feel like are kind of, going for the worst end? Or are there things that are kind of being better?
It was a shit show before, and it's going to be a shit show after. At this point, there are no teachers. Literally 75% of our country's population of teachers is gone. They've either retired or quit. And on top of that, nobody respects teachers. We don't get paid. They barely want us to take any days off. We are tired. Mama is tired over here, okay? Like, I've had enough. I've had enough of the United States. At this point, what education? The kids can learn off YouTube like the rest of us. YouTube University. Start charging for it at this point.
I mean, you never know. But I mean, I just think that I think I want to give more power and just more shout outs to you guys, because you guys are really dealing with a lot. You guys are looked to educate students, but also you guys are looked to essentially be the administrative figures behind how students pursue and receive their educations. I mean, you have to adapt to teaching within a virtual setting, and you have to adapt to teaching within a hybrid setting, and you have to adapt to sort of dealing with the mental state of being with some of the students and even their parents. And I just think that it's really shocking to just hear that, at least what I'm getting or gathering, is that the administrative side of the schools that you guys support aren't really stepping up to really give you guys the resources, or, as you said, the pay and the time to deal with all of these things.
But even to add to that, though, what about critical race theory? I mean, are you guys experiencing that, having to not be able to teach essentially American history to your students because it's being censored?
Yeah. So go ahead. No, Bevin, go ahead.
I'm going to answer the first part, and I'm going to answer the second part. The first part of, you're feeling like the school is just putting everything on the teacher's back. I feel like my experiences are different because of the schools I taught in. So at Yes Prep, it was a public charter school that was literally on a shit. My principal, she got her, education from Columbia, and the AP was, guys' education from Harvard. And I had other teachers on my grade level that went to Stanford and stuff, where I'm looking like, is UT, like, wait a minute, but, so it's like, they definitely came in and they were very well qualified. And then at this charter school, you had a dean of instruction and you had an instructional coach, and both of them were on your ass. Like, they were making sure that you were on it, that you were, keeping up with everything, that you're pushing the kids forward, and it's college readiness and all this different stuff, to where they had the support. And even though I wasn't working there during the pandemic, I had friends that were still working there. And even when I heard how they took the approach to the pandemic, I was like, oh, that is smart. And I'm like, why aren't we doing this? However, I'm at, public school now. And the school that I'm at, you could tell that in my head coming in, I'm like, there's a lot of holes in your routines and your procedures and your policies and stuff. And I could tell that this was like this before the pandemic, that y'all were struggling before. So, you go over there and it's literally just figure it out and just roll with the punches, and nobody's really there to support you. And I felt very bad for the first year teachers last year, because at least with me, I came from YesPrep with all my resources and I knew how to teach and all that. So it's like all I really had to learn was, how am I going to take my experience of being in the classroom and make it virtual? So after you teach me how to use that platform, I'm good. But these other teachers, they didn't know nothing. And the admin, everybody was so focused on so many other things, to where they would be in the classroom just winging it and just not even doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then at the end of the year, when all the kids are failing, that's when admin want to pop up like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then they're getting on the teacher for not knowing what to do when you weren't there to support them the whole year. So I would just say that to answer your question. And then with Burnett, with the critical race theory question, I just feel like I'm gonna do what I want to do. So, period. So it's just, but I'm gonna do what I want to do. So, at the school that I'm at right now, since they're all over the damn place, it's like, since I had really good resources, because with my units, my goal was to introduce the students to different cultures and, make them really think deeper about their society and stuff like that. So I would have a unit, and not just all about Blackness. I would give them a plethora of cultures. We had part-time Indian, like I said, with Native Americans. We had Persepolis about the Islamic Republic. We had, House on Mango Street talking about a Latino girl and her struggles. I would really try to touch on different cultures and stuff like that. That's what I brought from YesPrep. At this school, they didn't require novels. They didn't require none of that. And then even when I was going through their curriculum, I'm like, am I teaching 8th grade or 5th? Because a lot of this stuff that you're giving me is so watered down and there's no rigor at all, to where I didn't even touch their material. I literally just brought my material and just did what I had to do. And I definitely got a lot of pushback throughout this semester. And they'll be like, well, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I ain't doing this shit. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And then when my scores came, and then my scores were higher than the district and the campus, then they left me alone, because I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to do what I want to do, is the answer to that question.
It's the boldness for me.
It's for me too.
I'm gonna do what I want to do, and can't nobody tell me what to do. That's what it is for me.
That's what I need the department chair next year.
Goodness. I want to say, I think it depends. As far as critical race theory, I think it depends on the school and the district that you're in. My first school, told you, it was completely Black, so 98.8% of our population were all chocolate folks. There was probably like 0.5% that were probably of the Caucasian, and everything else in between was that percentage. This school that I'm at now, I want to say it's a large amount. I want to say 75% Black or Latino, and probably the rest is of Caucasian kids. So the difference between the two, my first school, it was completely about the culture, dominant culture, which was predominantly Black culture. So really exposing what's not told about American history, the side that they don't care to put in textbooks, which is our entire history, our entire life. Existence on Earth is not in a history book, other than what's publicized for the TV. So the actual figures that are always televised. But in this school, it's a little bit difficult, because being that I only do services now, I get to pop into different classrooms. So sometimes I'll sit and I observe, and I have observed that some of my coworkers who are teachers are experiencing trouble now, because as they are starting to encourage teaching the culture now of our people to the classrooms, which are mixed and diversity, some of the parents who are not of our culture are starting now to kind of pitch a fit. And it's like, what about knowing a history that's not yours bothers you so much? It's nothing to, like, there's no knowledge is bad knowledge. So for it to bother you so much, to the point that you are contacting the teacher, oh, I don't want my kids learning about this or reading this, it's not going to change anything. Your child still has to engage with these people. Your child still has to engage with the idea of the history. Your child is now a part of history. So you telling your child that you're not comfortable with them learning information about somebody of a different race because you don't agree with how brutal it is your problem. That's where I'm at. And I tell my boss all the time, one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna preach about my folks.
Okay.
I was brought up in a culture and a church where I had no choice but to learn my history. And the fact that I know students who don't know what I know, I'm gonna keep telling them. You're gonna have to have an attitude. I don't care if your kid is orange, green, polka dot stripe. Everybody gonna know about the chocolate folk because we have a story to tell.
Amen.
The good thing with you is that your pushback is just coming from the parents. Here in Texas, they're passing bills and laws saying,
oh, New York's not about to do that. New York's not doing that. Baltimore not doing that.
We had a department chair meeting. I think it was last month, and they pulled it up and they shared the screen. We're going over, the stuff, and of course, since I went to law school, I was trying to break down what it meant to them, and it was basically saying that all of the sensitive topics, controversial topics, they want to stray away from them. And they were saying that they kind of wanted you to be neutral. Like you can't really, push on the left or the right or anything, just kind of be neutral. And their suggestion was, instead of using, books, with different, people of different races, maybe look into books, about cartoon characters and animals because, they don't have races. And I'm like, the fuck are they talking about? I'm just looking like, what? But
I have a question though. That makes me think now because that now starts to move into the same territory where people are dancing around gender and identity. So you don't want people to acknowledge race, but you also want people not to acknowledge that there's now this whole conversation about gender identity. There's a whole lot of identity that is being ignored.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to that, what you just said. I think it's interesting because I haven't had the opportunity to go to Texas, but I do know that Texas is a very diverse, state. There's a rich culture of, Spanish and Latino. There's a culture of Black people. I'm kind of curious as to why there's such why there's such interest in really just abstaining from teaching Texas is true history because it's really made up of a diverse background. So why is it that there's such a pushback upon, educating people about those backgrounds?
Republican.
I mean, I was going to say that. I mean, I feel like Texas is...
You're Republican Confederate.
Yeah, it's a very Republican and a very conservative state. And they don't want to, do too much. They don't want to do too much.
But also, sorry to interject, Justin. Think about where the last slaves were to find out that they were freed in Galveston. That's Texas.
Yeah. That's
so
people think to all types of any type of change of thought, any form of divergent thinking leads to a spark of divergence. Period. So that means change, a consistent change, and most of the time, change can lead to outbreak of rebellion. Change of laws, all types of negative things that they want to stray away from because they know a power comes from divergence, and usually divergence means difference. So, and of course, the Confederate state cannot have divergence. That's just not a thing.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the potential is definitely there, though. I mean, we seen what happened with Georgia. Georgia was traditionally a red state, but that ended up being one of the deciding factors of the last election. So I don't know. I was always curious about that.
But you got to remember, Justin, Georgia, outside of the city which encompasses Atlanta, everything else is Confederate.
Everything else is, yeah.
So it's one city that houses is the most populous of our skin. And then everything else is Confederate. So it depends on... It's just like New York. New York is the same way. New York City is all Democrat. Completely
Democrat.
Right. And if you go outside of New York City, you have the Confederates. You have, they raise a different flag. It's just that happens that...
They wave it proudly.
Right. It's the fact that New York City is so dense with people that we are the majority. So whichever way that we vote is literally the way that the state goes.
So. I mean, New York City by itself is about a large amount of the state, honestly. So,
so it's one of those situations. So no one can really like outvote New York City unless you move them, which is what they're trying to do, which is a whole nother topic, which is could be a whole nother episode. But
yeah, not in Texas. I'm hearing all this. I'm just like, oh, it's beautiful, but not here.
Do you guys feel like, with everything that we talked about in mind, what sorts of things do you want to see come out of all this? Now that people are getting adjusted to the new normal, now that kids are back in schools, now that parents don't have to be, the everything per se for their kids. What sort of things do you want to see come out of this new period right now?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go with one, accountability. I need accountability to return to parents. And not just in the sense of like parents have been losing their minds lately, but there's so much that schools have now taken on. Schools have been going through so much with trying to adjust. Schools have now taken on the role of parenthood. So parents are now taking on the role of freedom, meaning they don't have to do anything. That's a problem, because it now leaves place for parents to kind of do the bare minimum. And secondly, I want to say mental health. I think since the pandemic has started, mental health has now become a top tier focus for me. That's for children and adults. Children have been facing a lot of abuse at home during this pandemic. And then that abuse now kind of projects onto whoever they are interacting with, whether it be other children or whether it be adults, including teachers, admin, parents, everybody. There's a level of mental health that is not being examined because of the pandemic. It's kind of just like the state of still what happens at home stays at home has still been happening, because it's so much going on. You don't have the time to kind of check in and be like, hey, I saw you whooping Boo Boo's kitty's behind. She showed up with half her head missing on the camera. I'm concerned. It's kind of like, is everything okay? All right. Can you turn in your homework? Like it has to be like, I think we have to, in order for us to return to normalcy, we have to acknowledge the elephants in the room. And that's parents holding parents back to being accountable. Your child's failing because I need you to do this and this. This homework is not done. I need a level of accountability to be had, and I also need for mental health to be checked in again. It seems like we've checked out on mental health. It's always been a taboo kind of thing, not just for a race, but as a people, period. Mental health has always been a taboo because you don't want to seem crazy. Crazy is very evident at the moment. Insanity is evident and running rampant right now because of the pandemic. So, off my soapbox.
I agree that accountability and mental health are important to see as like, a big takeaway from this pandemic experience. I am definitely very optimistic. So I'm looking at the situation. I'm like, we could have learned a lot during this situation. I feel like, mind you, 8th graders, they didn't know how to email before. like even when I'm like, y'all shoot me an email, they're like, what's that? I'm like, really? And then they're doing an email, they're putting the whole body of the email in the subject line. I'm like, oh, that's so cute. So it's just like learning how to use digital platforms and how to email and how to like do things online and actually use a computer and learning how to type and stuff like that. That's going to be essential for college. You walk around, you go to your lecture halls with your laptop. I feel like they're getting a head start on how to use their computers in an educational environment. So I feel like that is, great. I would like to see them continue to use them skills, after this. I would love to see, some other optimistic things. I would love to see parents actually understanding what all goes into teaching, because even with my mom, for example, with my little brother, she had to be the one to be the at-home person to keep him up with his classes. And then she's looking like, oh, I don't even remember this stuff. So it's like when they're starting to realize teaching is not just playing a video and asking some questions. it's a skill behind this, where we were certified in this. This is something that we do. Now they're realizing, okay, well, I can actually trust that my teacher know what they're doing. So that's another optimistic hope that I would want from, coming out of this pandemic. The parents understanding that teachers actually do their job and know what they're doing, and we can actually trust that this does take time and patience and a skill, because when your kid was at home and you had to do it, you couldn't do it. So, we're not just daycare providers watching them, we're actually doing something. So, the tech skills that students learn, and also the skills that the teachers learn. I feel like I didn't have to teach virtually, so now that I know how to teach virtually and I'm familiar with different platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all this different stuff, why not embed that into my classes moving forward, whether we're all in person or not? Like, I feel like having those technical components will make school and class engaging, especially with this generation of kids who are always glued to their phone. Let's stay glued to your phone with the class material. Let's go ahead and, have workstations where you might be able to do something with videos or do something on, Kahoot or whatever, and just kind of keep class engaged. So I feel like class engagement, parents, actually respecting what we're doing and supporting what we're doing. Kids, growing with their digital competencies and all those different things. I feel like that's what I like to see coming out of this. Like this generation of kids actually learning way more than what we have in the curriculum because of how they had to receive the curriculum.
I think I want to add one more too. So I'm thinking about what Bevin said. One thing I do want to see come out of this is kids learning how to be kids again. So we grew up on the generation of seeing the life before technology and seeing life after technology, right? And I think that was great because we learned how to be kids outside, enjoy the park. We learned how to play outside on our blocks and run around, whether we lived in the suburbs or the city. We learned how to kind of like make friends organically, without conversations about technology, which is obviously never going to happen again. But I want to see kids learn how to really be kids again, because I've seen, even before the pandemic, these kids don't know how to be children with each other. Like, they don't know how to interact with each other in a social setting without having like their phone. Like, I don't know how to, say hi, but I'm just going to stare at you from across the room and act like somebody's texting me. Like, those behaviors. I kind of want to see kids kind of like, hey, can I throw this ball at you? You catch it? Let's play monkey in the middle. You be the monkey. Like, I think that would be really good to see kind of like kids kind of reinvent the wheel now of what it looks like to be kids. But yeah.
I would love to see that too. These kids, they're a different type of kid. I mean, I feel like I get what you're saying with the social skills of like, you're always at home, you're scrolling on social media, you're taking classes on your phone sometimes and stuff like that. So where, you do need to learn how to socialize again. But even outside of learning how to socialize again, these kids are dysfunctional. Like, I would learn, like, when I get into Mr. Holloway teacher mode, I'm all excited about the lesson and all this different stuff. That's when they want to try me. But then when I start getting on their ass and getting them together, that's when they like me. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, why
can't you take
the good part 0 to 1,000 for you to now be like, I like Mr. Holloway. Y'all ghetto. But
so it's like spice nowadays.
But it makes no sense. So the kids that love me the most are the ones I really had to go off on, and that makes no sense to me. But I feel like the social skills, yes. But with my age group, in 8th grade and stuff like that, I feel like the social skills aren't too off. They're like us. They're on social media. They're following different stuff. They're keeping up with different trends. They're talking to their friends and stuff like that about it. So it's not too bad in 8th grade. I did see a little bit last year coming straight out of hybrid learning, some kids being a little socially awkward. But outside of that, now that we're all in person, it's okay. Like, they're not too bad. And they're hilarious because I feel like since they've been in the house scrolling on social media so much, they keep up with the trends. Like, even one little girl, I think for Christmas, she was like, yeah, my mom, she been going to the store, she been going to Walmart, and she been spending like almost $500 a day. And I was like, oh, she getting y'all Christmas gifts? She said, Walmart sell Christmas gifts? She said, oh no, I don't do those type of gifts. She said, she was like, I want that Telfar bag. I'm trying to get them cool grades. He was like, I want that. He was like,
I was trying to go to Juicy Couture. They fit right to the top.
So it's like they definitely keep up with the trends and all that different stuff. So I would say that they're definitely being influenced by social media. So hopefully everything they're keeping up with is good. That's the only downfall. Hopefully everything they keep up with is cool. But if they're keeping up with good stuff, I don't think they're no different from us, because I'll be right here scrolling just like them.
I feel like that's a whole nother topic in itself, because I know that we did grow up seeing like the beginning stages of social media with MySpace, Bebo, Skonex, like all of those different things.
I forgot about Skonex.
But like
high five! Oh my gosh!
But like, we used to do stuff like for like, comment for comment, but like, I feel like now this is to another level. It's a totally another level. And my concern is that social media will have detrimental impacts on this generation, because I know it has detrimental impacts on me and my peers, like as millennials, because we're like, okay, people are making this amount of money off of YouTube or this amount of money off of this. Like, people don't have to do the 9 to 5 thing anymore. But that's
the pandemic.
That's a whole nother topic.
I'm still trying to figure out how to make that YouTube money.
We trying to get
that gold plaque.
Justin, we trying to get our gold plaque because we trying to get these people to like, subscribe, and comment.
Listen, once we get that gold plaque, this 9 to 5 life is it.
At this point, I'm starting to OnlyFans tomorrow, because the way that look.
Wait, don't end up on a Tinder swindler now.
No.
Not Tinder swindler. No, not Tinder swindler.
Justin.
Yeah, Justin, take it away. Justin.
All right, guys. We can obviously keep going on all day with how this conversation is going, but I really do once again want to take the time to thank both of you. I think you guys have really shared some very insightful, very educational, and also very just two very distinctive viewpoints that I really feel like is going to be a lot of great information for our listeners and viewers. And I want to give you kudos, because you need more people like you. We need more Black educators. We need more Black educators that are knowledgeable in what they're doing, their history, and also just out there doing a great work. So shout outs to you guys, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. You guys were so fun, and I learned so much from y'all, honestly, that I didn't really know, even just with what educators have to deal with and what y'all have dealt with during the pandemic. So I really appreciate you guys coming and taking the time to speak with us about it. So thank you.
I just appreciate that y'all recognize the struggle, and y'all have a whole podcast for what we deal with every day. And I'm glad that Miss Love is in a whole different state saying, I see you. And I'm looking like, I see you too. So this was definitely great. So thank you for having me. Follow me on Instagram, Logan Kiefer Jones. And if you want to learn about
waiting for it.
and if you're a teacher in the ELA department and you need some help, I got you. Oh yeah, that's all I got.
I'm on Instagram at Love on the Rocks _ If you need a good laugh or a good YouTube channel, please tune in. My name on my YouTube channel is Deanee Love. I do book reviews, really funky book reviews, and I also do story times and vlogs, because the girl's a little ghetto on the weekends. So.
Yeah, we'll plug all of that in the video so people can get to y'all's pages and everything and follow you guys. But yes, this was fun. So good night, guys.
All right, guys. So we're going to sign off on this note. It's been a pleasure having you guys view and listen. We'll have to see you next time. We out.
All right.
Bye.